This is Kitzur Yomi as we continue El Tzitzis. We are up to Sif Yud Dalid in the 9th parak. Continuing, Chutei HaTzitzis says the Kitzur. The strings of the tzitzis, Shrichon Liyos Shizurin, have to be spun. Every string of tzitzis is not a single strand. And the truth is, if you take your tzitzis, sometimes they fray, or even more, if you just sort of untwist them, you'd be able to see. Let's try to see if we can get this on camera. If you untwist them, you can even see that they're comprised of multiple strands. Certainly shizurim. If any string unraveled, azai kol hapara nechshav, then the entire unraveled portion is kilu nixas ve'eno if it's not there. And the difference would be is that it would be considered like it's not part of the tzitzis. And we have to go back to the previous halachos. What happens if the string rips? Continues the Kitzur Sif Tezvav. Tallis yesh by tzitzis, a tallis that has tzitzis v'nechalik l'shnei chalakim, and the tallis splits in half. Apparently that was common. They got so worn out that they split in half. Which are made out of two pieces of cloth. And sometimes the piece of cloth gets split in half to clean it or to fix it. And then what would they do? They would sew back together. Says the Kitzur, that doesn't work. Kivan, since each portion of the tzitzis is large enough to wrap yourself in it, therefore, it's enough if you remove two of the tzitzis shears of each part. And after you resew the two halves back together, and then you could sew back. Because again, if not, you'd have a problem of because of course, when this tallis comes into two, now it's two different tallisos, and now each one has tzitzis on it. But then when you put it back together, the tzitzis were made before the garment was made. So says the Kitzur, because each half has its own shear, you could just remove two of them and put it back together. Aval, however, each half is not large enough. Then you have to move all the tzitzis because when you sew back together, the whole tzitzis is not considered one big bag. If the original tzitzis would be there, then it would be a problem, as we said, of pasal mishatase as we have learned. Continues the Kitzur, but if one side has enough, then yes, it's a tzitzis. And then the other side, you can leave them on. Again, not so relevant in the practical cases. Our talisos are not splitting in half, but something to be cognizant of, that the strands can never be made before the beged. And we continue with Sif Tezayin. If the corner is cut or is torn, and it fully is ripped off, and that piece is not 3 by 3. Some say that piece even after sewn onto the tallis, since it's so small, even after it's put back on, you can't put tzitzis on that portion. The kiman since it's at 3 by 3, in a less shame baget, and they also have a shame of a baget, and therefore vilim is chabra matals nechshav kiparod, and therefore you were never allowed to be put the tzitzis on it. So if a small portion of the corner rips off, and you sew back on, says the Kitzur, that's considered like it's not there, because it never had a shame baget. It never was large enough to be considered its own piece of garment. Therefore, sewing it back together will not work. However, doesn't fully sever. It's a little bit attached. You can sew back on. You consider the tallis ksheira, and the kshashos, therefore the tzitzis that you'd put on afterwards would be kosher. Continues the Kitzur v'noigin litvar tichas baget. We are noig to sew a piece of cloth 3 by 3. Bekanfei hatalis onto the corner of talis misham, and this, of course, if you look at the corners of your tzitzis, of your tallis, you'll see that on the corners there's that extra piece of cloth, that extra square cloth. Why? Says the Kitzur, even when they are new, have cloths of cloth on the corners. L'chein, noisim makom atolas hatzitzis. Therefore, the place they put the tzitzis on, they place chaticha shel shlosh gedolim al shlosh gedolim to make sure that that piece is strong and is considered the shear of the beged. Yeshayim remikted with sif yitzayin shebachol hashetach shel hakanaf. The entire area of the corner shoyolat al bayas hatzitzis. That the whole corner that is roi to put on the tzitzis. Dainu. Mimoli akasher koidel misvas hatals. From the distance of 1 thumb length until the corner, till the hole. Ad shlishi gedolim until 3 thumb lengths. Lo yeba shum tefer. There should be no stitching. Afilu mash even a little bit b'chol with any thread. Sheirei lasu b'chutika elu. That would theoretically have been possible to be made. Tzitzis l'talis zeh. That the thread could have been the tzitzis. Ki inim atal shel pishton. Lo yitver sham b'chutei pishton. Don't sew with linen. Rak b'chutei mashi chudaima. The metal shell tzemer meshi. If the talis is made out of silk, lo yitafru b'chutei meshi. Talis shell tzemer of wool, lo yitafru b'chutei tzemer. Oler b'shell meshi uchadaima. V'yesh lahachmer b'zegam, says the Kitzur. One should be careful with this. When, in what type of case, if it rips and you're sewing it back together, as we spoke, that the corner, the hole in the corner of the beged, what do we say they do? They sew around it to reinforce it. Excuse me, so that it doesn't rip. Says the Kitzur, you should be careful with what threads you sew that up. You don't sew with the same type of thread as the garment itself. It's only if you're sewing it with a white thread. You don't have to be worried that a colorful thread, no one would think that that is the tzitzis itself. Says the Kitzur. Very common shayla. You want to remove the tzitzis from a talis. Your tzitzis are dirty or they're fraying, so you want to take them off to put on new tzitzis. Yoiser yafais that are nicer. One ripped. You want to put on full ones. Even though the first ones are kosher. Why? Because you're not being mevatel this garment from tzitzis. You're putting on nicer tzitzis. You should be careful. And this is really a very important line. Everyone wants to know, what do you do? So the Kitzur is paskind that you do not have to put the tzitzis into shemais. Why? What did he say? He said, just don't put it in a milkum b'zayin, because you can discard of it, wrap it up in a gentle manner. That is the opinion of the Kitzur. Many people do indeed take the strings and bury them, but the Kitzur is teaching us that you're allowed to just wrap it up and put it in the garbage. And again, he's telling you that you're allowed to take off the strings because you're putting on nicer ones. If you became possible, you remove the talis, don't throw it into the garbage. As we just said, to put inside a sefer, to use as a bookmark. The klal. Once one mitzvah is done, you want to do another mitzvah with it. Talis became worn out. In the mitzvah, you're no longer wearing it. You should not use it for a degrading purpose, but rather you should discard it in an appropriate manner. And we continue with Sivchav. Sivchav, which is bringing us into Shabbos. In Bala Shabbos, you find that one of your strings are apostle. You can't bar another talis. You're embarrassed, and now we're at talis. Then it's impossible today. You can't sew on to another tzitzis. Then it's a tremendous chiddush. The Kitzur is teaching us the klal that kavod abriyos can even be deicha alav, because you're wearing a 4-cornered garment without tzitzis. How are you allowed to do that? Says the Kitzur, because you're embarrassed to sit without a talis, we're going to allow you to do it. But says the Kitzur. So only if you didn't know about it, shenifsala. Alim yadba kaidim Shabbos shenifsala. Also, love that you're not allowed to wear it onto Shabbos. Because you should have fixed it prior. We continue with Simcha Valav Aloyvish Begid Shuchayev Tzitzis B'lay Tzitzis Harizeh Betel Mitzvah Sasehi. You can't wear a four-corner garment without tzitzis. V'srichel Hashkiach, you have to be careful. B'ksas Begadim, with some garments Hasuyim Ba'ifan that remain in a mannerism Sheish Lahem Arba Kanafais, that they have four corners. And therefore, what do? Srichel Lechituch Karen Echad. Of course, we know people have this on their frocks. You have to round one of the corners, shiagol, to make a round. Avalo ever kafel as a karen. If you fold over the corner of a tiferet and sew it down, Bidin shenira kagel just looks around it. Loimahani, it does not help. The whole kamash lechatzcha. If you do not sew it up, adayin mechlala beged hu, because it's still considered part of the beged. 1 second, we just lost the last line. Concludes. 1 second, I apologize. Concludes the Kitzur. Concludes the Kitzur. The punishment for one who's vatal mitzvah say is great. We end with incredible words. Hopefully, the Kitzur began with incredible schar. It's keneged kulam. It's keneged all of 613 mitzvahs. In the end, it will be Zayir, hopefully, b'siyata d'shmaya. By learning the halachas, will be Zaycha v'raya p'nei hashchina. We'll pick it up from here, b'siyata d'shmaya.